All right, well, hello everybody once again, and welcome to this week's episode of Nerdflix and Chill. I'm Gary Theroux, over there preparing to cure cancer through purely the power of his quadriceps. It's Sean Capri.
I don't even know what a quadricep is. Is that something that Matt Fody has on like the back of his tricep? Is that like a muscle on top of a muscle?
He's probably got spare hideaway quadriceps, like for backup quad.
Or is that like the muscles underneath like He-Man's like silver backpack that he wears on the front? He-Man, I guess, kind of wears like, what are the things that you carry a baby in? Like
A baby Bjorn?
a Bjorn, yeah. He's got like a baby Bjorn, but for his boobs. He's got a He-Man boob Bjorn, but it's made out of like pure metal. I really like that. I just realized how paternal that is.
I like how instantaneously you went from He-Man to Matt Fody, though. That's pretty complimentary of our pal there.
They both make me feel inferior in my muscles.
Well, that being
I'm
said,
happy to talk to you, buddy.
he doesn't have his own podcast, so you can lord
Why
that over
doesn't
him
he?
whilst he flexes and makes his tits dance. Like
He could have like a 60-minute podcast where he just flexes. It's just silent, but you can hear like the universe sort of expand and contract as he flexes his muscles.
just Terry cruises his tits up and down as he yeah.
No screaming though.
This is pretty inside baseball for those of you who don't
Just
befriend
imagine
the
He-Man.
Matt
if he's one
Fodys
our
of the
friends.
world. All right. Well,
You
I'm
sound great.
excited to be back. Oh, thank you. Yes, microphone upgrades from the Capri and extended family this week.
Hooray, we sound great. I think I'm setting up pillows all around me to catch echoes, so we're working on it, everybody. It's getting better. Episode, what are we on? 15? Been doing this we've seen 15 movies in the theater, at least this year.
Which is like 13 more than we have since 2012. That's
Probably.
Yes,
I'm very happy.
absolutely. It's
I'm
been
all full
great.
of popcorn. I actually don't think that popcorn digests properly anymore. There's just kind of like a spot in my stomach that it collects. There's a corner of my stomach that the popcorn's like, oh, hey, we were sent here by Colonel. You know, the guy from the
Jesus.
commercial.
Wow.
I'm so tired.
Apparently, yes.
Oh,
Well,
man.
I gotta say, I'm excited to be back this week. We watched 2 movies this week that I was, if not eagerly anticipating, at least primed for, and one that I absolutely loved beyond belief. This week we're going to be talking about the new Bourne entry, Json Bourne, and our 6 Degrees of Chill segment took us to Inglorious Basterds, which is something I couldn't have been happier about.
Me
So,
neither.
one of the things we've been doing for a little while now is talking trailers from the new movie we went and saw. And before Json Bourne, we saw a couple that we haven't spoken about on here. One is the true story of Captain Sully Sullenberger, who landed a flight on the Hudson River and saved however many souls they mention in this trailer. This is directed by Clint Eastwood and starring Tom Hanks. And it's coming out in Oscar season, and it looks like another biopic that is aiming directly for a Best Actor statue and a Best Director statue and a Best Picture nomination. And all that's left now, we don't even need to see it. That's what you made it for. All that's left now is to see if it wins.
Yep, I don't need to see this trailer anymore. I think it looks incredible. I'm not sure why. Like, do you remember the movie Flight
Absolutely.
with Denzel? Was that a true story as well? Are we having like planes just flying, like falling out of the sky, and inebriated pilots landing them in a miraculous fashion?
Flight, I believe, was entirely fictionalized.
Okay.
And kind of a different type of story, right? They're less focusing on the act of heroism and more focusing on the man and the disease in that film. And I
Right.
think this is going to be more an exploration of what it's like to be hailed as a hero. I'm hoping that the act of heroism happens right at the beginning of this, and they explore what it's like to be hailed as a hero when you feel you've just done your job, right? You were not thinking I'm about to act in a heroic way, or I need to do something even though it's not required of me. Like, so much of what we see in film now is diehardish, fish out of water.
Right.
Man's got to step up and do what a man's got to do.
Yeah, this
And
fish is in the water.
He's absolutely
This
in
is
the
like
water.
water off the duck's back.
Exactly.
And a fish swimming below him.
Something like that, yes. And he's required to simply do what he's been trained for. And then the fallout of that, both the people supporting you and accusing you and just the maelstrom that follows what you think of as doing your job. And I think it's even though I'm sure it's a dye job, some people are like, oh, I went to this Json Bourne with a friend of mine when he saw Tom Hanks with his white hair dye job, was like, oh, he got old, eh? And although they aged him up for this movie, it did make me think, I'm really excited for the prospects of old Tom Hanks.
Me too. Maybe this is just it. He's going to just move into that age forever now.
Could we get another 30 years of Tom Hanks playing
I would like it.
And grandfather characters and still jumping back into comedy and drama and thrillers? I would love to see him do more thrillers and stuff like that. But
I would too.
Yeah, I'm excited for the prospect of old Tom Hanks, and we're drifting off the point here of saying that this preview is solidly done.
Yep.
I don't know if there's anything to spoil here. It's a true story. It's not going to give away all the corners that they're going to explore. A story like this is about depth, so there's only so far you can take it. I will say I was very excited by the trailer. It is a see it for me. I'm excited for this movie to come out. What were your thoughts on the trailer before we give our scores?
Very much the same. I will spoil something right now that I cannot believe is not in the trailer. Somebody comes into the cockpit and he looks at Tom Hanks and he says, "I'm the captain now." It's gonna happen again, and then he's gonna go off in a life pod out the river. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, I'm just kidding. I think this looks great. I'm gonna go very high on the Rotten Tomatoes score. I typed in 90, you might have seen. I'm going to go even higher. I'm going 95. I think this is going to be amazing. And the critics are going to love it.
We're both quite optimistic, and I think this is just a matter of if one of us can hit it right on the nose, because I'm predicting a 92 for this.
Oh, this is kind of neat technology here for this, just to bring everybody in the Gary and I both work off of a Google Doc. It's powered by the cloud. I can see him type it in live. There's a nice little pink cursor. That was really neat. I'm right there with the listeners. I'm finding out just as you are. Although I guess I would be if I was just listening to you and not waiting for the number to appear. Anyway, I find
Isn't
this
technology
stuff
grand?
Yeah, we're both working on the same Word document. We're word processing simultaneously. Anyway, what's next?
Well, the next preview we saw for our entry in the game is for a movie called The Girl on the Train. And I have to say...
This is that song that James Blunt was singing about. You're beautiful. Was that James Blunt?
I believe that's
I saw you on the train, and I'll never see you again.
Okay, well, if that's where your mind went, we're slightly separate on what we thought of. Because for me, and I'm sure this is intentional, I'm positive this is intentional, it was just conjuring thoughts of Gone Girl.
Gone Girl,
right?
Yep.
So, I mean, the IMDb synopsis of this movie is, it's the story of a woman's life post-divorce and how she takes the train to work every single day and passes her old house, including the house she lived in with her husband, who still lives there with his new wife and child. And as she attempts to not focus on her pain, she starts watching the couple who lives a few houses down. She creates a wonderful dream life for them in her head and how they're the perfect family. And then one day as the train passes, she sees something shocking. And this preview, I think, to me, gives away too much of what that shocking thing is. There's a woman in a tunnel who appears to be abducted, and then there's an investigation that follows, and there's people getting their hair grabbed and knocked over and threatened and screamed at and accused, and there's so much going on here, and I don't like when previews give away this much of their content. I hope I don't see this trailer again before I go see this movie.
Yeah.
I like Emily Blunt quite a bit.
Yep.
I like Justin Theroux because he's got a great name.
Great name.
I like Edgar Ramirez quite a bit. I worry about anybody who employs Lisa Kudrow at this point, but maybe that's just Phoebe bias.
No, I'm right with you. She's terrible.
But I will say that I have a certain level of optimism just based on hitting the tone of Gone Girl and the fact that I think ever since Gone Girl came, people have been looking for that type of smart thriller to be back in the theaters. I have a feeling this is going to aim there and miss, but still be generally well received. And I will predict that it comes out with a fresh score of 72.
Sorry, I'm oohing over you saying this. This is part of the simultaneous word. So you're saying 72. Okay, my quick thoughts. I thought I wouldn't have picked up on a lot of what's in the trailer had you not actually read the synopsis. I thought the trailer is kind of a mess. There's a lot going on, and it is, now that you mentioned it, it is giving away quite a bit.
Check out our flash imagery.
Pew, 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 lots of going on, and you don't know who to trust, and who's this woman, and who's that woman, and who's maybe alive, and who, like, I don't know what's happening. I know that I'm definitely intrigued, and it really is mostly because of, like, even just the color palette, the lighting, like, the way that this is shot is a lot like Gone Girl. So that has me somewhat intrigued. I'm kind of with you. I think that just based on, I mean, that's really all we're doing here is just based on the trailer. I don't know that it's going to hit. And the other thing, too, is, do we need another movie like that? And with one that's been done so well, at least in my mind, what happens when this one doesn't hit, like, even close to, or even if it's not right there with it, does it get docked even more points? So I'm kind of right there with you. I'm going to say 70.
All right. Well, so we're not going to get a ton of separation in our August.
Yeah, that's not as fun.
Game. No, that's perfectly fine. We'll have more movies as we get more into this game, predicting RT scores for movies based on their trailers. I will say we forget sometimes to mention what the initial thought of Trailer Talk was, which is when we see a preview, are we thinking see it or skip it? And for me, with both of these movies, it's definitely a resounding see it.
Yep, me too. I agree. Sorry, we totally skipped past that. And for anybody new, we are predicting the Rotten Tomato scores for these movies. And I don't have these written down. Do you know when either of these are coming out? Are they soon? When do we get to find out if we're winners on this?
I believe Sully is way down the road. I haven't seen the release date for that one, but I thought it was coming out in Oscar season, which is generally November, December. But Girl on the Train, I can look up.
You do that, and I will fill space by telling you that Sully is coming out September 9th. So
all right, so apparently I don't know shit about shit.
No, you know some shit about shit. You give lots of shits. So we have a couple movies to look forward to. Just so everybody else knows, too, we have 2 movies coming out on August 19th that we've predicted in the last episode, War Dogs, and we also predicted the scores for Ben-Hur. So August 19th, we got some good separation on those. So
we'll start to see some payoff on our game. The Girl on the Train is coming out October 7th, so neither of them are too far away.
Okay.
That is closer than one would assume. It's ridiculous how fast this summer is gone, but...
Makes me sad.
Keep jumping from mediocre movie to mediocre movie. And in that vein, we saw another one this week. Is my general opinion. With the new movie we went and saw this week is installment number 5 in the Bourne series, titled simply Json Bourne. Obviously, this is the Matt Damon vehicle, and the synopsis for this one is super simple. The most dangerous former operative of the CIA is drawn out of hiding to uncover hidden truths about the past.
That's Json Bourne.
Yes, exactly. It's almost like the most excitement you get out of this movie is someone intensely saying the character's name.
I've had a crazy week, but I so wanted to have something set up. I'm hoping maybe next week. I want to have a soundboard. I need to do a couple of technological tests, but I want to have a soundboard for us because I would think it would be really funny to have some of the quotes that I'm sure I could pull out of the trailer and just have ready for us. But I would just love to, like, every 30 seconds in our little chat here, just to throw it, that's Json Bourne. And then, like, have that song that they've been doing since the very beginning, like the very first one. I don't even know what that song is, but it's all strings.
Yeah, I know exactly what
this
you
is
mean.
why we need a soundboard, is because I can't do this. It's almost like if the Matrix kept using that Rage Against the Machine song, but for like 25 years. Like, I think it would continue to use Wake Up.
I think it's called Wake Up, yes, and I think Star Trek has proven that you can beat the shit out of a single good song for as long as you possibly want, and eventually use it to win galactic space.
Star Trek is going to be like our new Batman v Superman. For you.
Yeah,
it's going to be yours anyways.
I think it'll take a while to beat that record of, like, I think it was 8 or 9 straight episodes getting shit talked consecutively. That's where we've set our bar. It's like winning 1v1 on Sports Center every night.
Pretty much. So I think overall, my thoughts on this movie are meh. And like, there's a couple of good things. Like, I kind of jotted down a few notes coming out of the theater that I'm like, what did I really enjoy about this? None of them are really like crucial to a good movie. There's like I'm really reaching here when I go. The chase scenes are good as always. I think like sound effects are really good. The SWAT truck scene I think is really just devastating. But for the most part, this movie doesn't need to exist. I think Matt Damon doesn't even really want to do this movie. All the promotion that I've seen of it, he's just like, "Hi, I'm Matt Damon," and like not even. I didn't even mean to do the Team America thing, but it kind of sounds like that. I'm really excited to do this Json Bourne movie, and perhaps I'll speak. I think what does he have, like 15 lines in this tops?
It's very reminiscent of Bourne Supremacy in that vein, that this movie is not so much about, and I made this note, not so much about Bourne himself, but more about the world that's been created around him and the way people interact in a world that has this character existing, right? This super spy that's out there on the lam.
That world is basically a dark, like, CIA room with a bunch of computer monitors and people yelling at Alpha Team and Bravo Team to go get him, and then act shocked when this elite guy just takes them all out. Like, what are they? This movie is so boring, so predictable. I was actually a little upset coming out of it. It's
really?
Most of the 4 Matt Damon movies, this is by far the most unintelligent. Everything is explained over and over. I mean, even when the hacking that usually in movies can be kind of smart. There's an interesting way to kind of ruin somebody's day by hacking. They type in commands. This kind of, you talked about this with phone numbers like 555, takes you completely out of the movie and you realize now I'm watching a movie. When they write in commands into a computer screen that says run predictive algorithm,
yes.
And then it like it does the thing. Like, you didn't need to do. Why didn't you just type in some random code that I wouldn't have understood? And then I get what you're going for here, but this is a movie about intelligence that is it's so dumbed down. And I feel like I go to the Bourne movies for that great action, the crazy fight scenes of just like this really violent hand-to-hand combat, and then obviously it brings a level of intelligence that we don't normally get with these types of movies. This is just dumbed down completely. I thought the writing was really poor.
Well, and we've talked about this in the past, but this is a movie that doesn't give its audience a ton of credit, right? Whereas I believe the first 3 that the Bourne entries did, right? And especially 2 and 3, the Bourne Paul Greengrass collaborations, and they claimed that they really did want to do this movie. They watched Legacy. They had to give a thought to passing this franchise off and having nothing to do with it anymore, as Tony Gilroy and Jeremy Renner would take it where they wanted to go if they were going to continue with this. And they said, no, we want back in. We have more to tell. And I just feel like they had more enthusiasm for the character they had made already than they did enthusiasm for telling a new story, right? Because that felt like they were underarmed here, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't have enough ammo to do the damage they wanted to do with this movie. So, I mean, thoughts that I had. The first thing you'll notice sitting down in this movie, and I think most people know this based on the preview and the return of Matt Damon, but a completely different tone of movie from Legacy. Legacy, with Renner and Rachel Weisz, almost returned to what the first film did in terms of the sense of adding a bit of mystery into the movie, right?
Right.
Less about spy craft and more about solving a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
And I very much like that aspect. That I think had we not had Legacy to split this up from the last 2 Bourne sequels, this wouldn't have been so jarring. But it definitely was jarring to me, the tonal shift.
Yeah, I don't know if the movie in between had really anything to do with it. For me, like, the first bad note that I had written down, which touches on a word that you just talked about, is the mystery. And that's what another one of the things I come to the Bourne series for, is the mystery. Like, who is he? But I also feel like we've learned enough. We didn't need to revisit the mystery of who he is, the idea that he doesn't remember anything. It's like we've been there now 3 times. We've got a pretty good idea. of who he is, no matter how many different names we're going to come up for this guy, whatever his Christian name is or whatever we go by now. I think the mystery of Json Bourne has never been more uninteresting, which really all adds up to a hollow movie that any hollow movie is going to be too long. This is just another example of me sitting in a movie theater for far too long, could be cut down quite a bit.
Oh, really?
I thought it just like the middle, I guess we would call that the second act in the industry. I think it just drags and there's nothing there.
Oh, really? See, so I think I get the sense that I am more forgiving to this than you are. I didn't ultimately think it was that great, but I don't have any hostility towards the movie based on the fact that I think it services what a lot of people were looking for to get back to this type of movie. And there's a chase sequence at the beginning.
Yep.
His first reappearance into this world that happens simultaneously with a riot in Greece.
Right, yep.
And
Good
I will
scene.
say that I can still say that Greengrass does these things better than anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen a chase this interesting in a very, very long time. And you
I'll
talk
give it
about
that.
movies like Ronin that have really, really great chase scenes, and a lot of people like the small car chase actually from Identity. I feel like that sequence was mapped out and blocked in such a way that it was very, very interesting, even if it was a little hack for a series like this to have perfectly timed flaming couches falling off of roofs and whatnot. It was engaging. It was excellent.
Yep.
And even if you ultimately don't like the full product, you get something here for your dollar, right? And I really, really like that part of it. But you're right. We talked about it. You kind of go back to the
But it's a Born by numbers at this point.
absolutely right. They're giving you, they're going with a lot of assumptions that you know this. We're back to the brooding silent spy who's been ceaselessly beat down by the constant running and stuff like that. And they kind of don't do a lot of character exposition because they assume you came to this after doing a binge watch of the first three movies and ignoring the fact that Legacy exists, and you just want more to find out where he is now. And so we're not going to do any backstory or anything like that. We jump right back into a relationship that's been, I don't know, years since we've had 11 minutes of screen time between he and Julia Stiles.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're just assuming that these two still have this deep connection from 2 movies ago. And it feels a little bit unearned. And so in terms
What
of
about the
spinning
villain,
up
do you
what's
think?
new about this, so in terms of spinning up what's new about this, and I was just wanting to make that same shift that you did. We haven't talked about what they added to this movie, right?
Yeah.
So the cast, they've added Tommy Lee Jones, Alicia Vikander, and Vincent Cassel as the main 3 pieces, all playing roles that you are very, very familiar with.
Yeah.
If you watch any of the Matt Damon Bourne movies, right? Tommy Lee Jones is playing the Chris Cooper, Brian Cox, David Strathairn, Ed Norton, looming CIA or FBI head who runs the program now and wants Json Bourne dead, right? Rather than contained, right? And Alicia Vikander is playing what was Julia Stiles' original role, but then Joan Allen, and she's the woman inside who thinks there may be more to this story and doesn't completely want Bourne dead at all costs, right? And then Vincent Cassel is playing Clive Owen and Carl Urban and the agent who's in the new iteration of the program that was birthed with Treadstone, and he's the agent that's chasing him. So these are new cast, but these characters feel old and tired in a certain way. I wanted to say about Vikander that I think she's fantastic actress.
Yep.
I very much love her. I don't know if you saw Ex Machina last year, but absolutely amazing in that movie. Actually, really underrated in a movie that I thought was underrated as a whole. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. that came out last year with
I missed that
Superman and the Lone Ranger.
Yep.
It's a fun popcorn movie. It's not going to go up in the pantheon anywhere with the greatest movie of all time, but she's really, really good, right? But I really, really hate her casting in this movie. It feels so workshopped and tested and planned, right? That a woman of this age has risen to this position within the CIA, just so we can have screen time with a beautiful young woman on the working opposite or alongside, depending on how you view it, Json Bourne. And that role of the woman on the inside who doesn't support her boss's tactics feels so tired. And I just didn't like her casting. What did you think of her specifically?
Predictable. I think the arc that she has is predictable. Just not really notable. I don't think. Nobody in this movie is really that notable. I'm seeing more and more of Tommy Lee Jones in movies these days, and I want him, and I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love for him to just have a crazy comeback and have a role that he can just like in The Fugitive or something where we remember just him just completely blowing us away, and he's just kind of cashing a check here.
Yeah, that would be great because I have a lot of like Tommy Lee Jones has a lot of credit in my bank for The Fugitive and things like that. I love him. But all I could come out of this movie thinking is he has absolutely perfected resting bitch face, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got one of the classic sort of scowls.
Well, the folds on his face have sort of like settled into a spot that makes that
and added to his frown. Yeah, exactly. And then I mean, at this point, I think I was thinking of those characters like who's he playing, and it's like, oh yeah, it's David Strathairn in Ultimatum, and Brian Cox is the main guy in Supremacy, and Chris Cooper was the guy in Identity. It's exactly the same character, and it's like, well, good for you, Tommy Lee Jones, proving that there are still roles for old white guys in Hollywood, right? Like, oh yeah, you guys can still keep working. Good for you. Mm-hmm. I think of that, and I think of it like, for me, the whiteness of this movie is absolutely staggering, right? Like, I don't know anyone who I could think of that might know the name of either the black actor in this movie or what his character's name is, right? Like, if his name was Token in the credits, I would not be shocked at all. And it seemed exactly like that, like tokenism. They threw him in there so they could say, yeah, we don't have a movie without a single person of color in our movie. They made the head of the tech company in this movie a brown guy, which felt like a tone-deaf addition of race into your movie. Like, that's what you do if you were worried about getting accused of not having any diversity. It's like, oh, we have a role for a tech guy. What do we get? Oh, a young brown guy is definitely how you do that.
Aziz Ansari goes on and on about that, about how he's like, I might as well have started writing my own stuff because all I was getting were taxi cab drivers and IT dudes. So.
Yes, exactly. And it's such bullshit. It adds to the feeling of laziness that permeates throughout this movie, right?
SJW hat looks nice on you, buddy. I like that.
SJW.
Social justice warrior. It's nice. Oh, it's nice to see you fighting for the from your white privilege chair.
Yeah, exactly. What is it? Check your privilege? Is that the thing that they say to each other now?
Sure.
Yeah. I don't think my activism is going to extend beyond noting in this movie that it felt stilted. I think I lack the engagement to really fight alongside the protesters roaming the streets, but
starting off on the internet's fine.
And I think maybe it's because this movie's not terrific that I had time to think of crap like that, and the fact like you have the character that Vincent Castle plays, the asset from the other program that gets started in the wake of Treadstone. And again, we've seen this character archetype before, but in this case, you give him a throwaway line of backstory. And they're trying to frame him as an American patriot, a military hero who volunteered for this program and has revenge on his mind. And he's a patriot assassin in this case. He's not just a regular assassin, but he wants Bourne because it's personal, because for love of country. And if you're going to make him an American patriot, why did you pick the Frenchest actor working in Hollywood with the thickest accent you've ever heard? Like, it does this movie.
He was the minority hire.
Well, this series has always been so international, and yet you have your, like, yeah, it just, again, maybe it's because I had time to think about this crap. But, so we've covered a bunch of stuff without talking about specifics, because we don't do spoilers in these reviews.
Yeah.
We haven't really reviewed the movie in the sense that it looks great, the actors look great, the casting for me is what fell short. You didn't like the second act, I didn't mind it, although, again, it didn't really grab me in any way. I love that.
Because it didn't do anything.
And then the third act, the action sequence, is still, like, done fairly well, but then it almost seemed like it was guest directed by Michael Bay. Like, they just went over the top and out of the real world that they had established in this series. And I think all of that adds up to sort of an unbalanced movie that is very, very, very fan servicey. And I think, to your point, right when we started talking about this,
way. It's like box office crowd fan service of like the summer blockbuster fan crowd, and that's not what
For
these
sure.
movies are.
Yeah, you're right.
To
It's
me,
supposed to be smarter, and then I also think
yes.
of Matt Damon. I think it's actor servicey in the sense that he did this because he wanted to.
Well, and
He
he was
wanted to
jacked.
cash a check. Yeah, yeah. He wanted to get in shape,
Yep, you look
cash
good.
a check, and so he can go do another Behind the Candelabra and Informant because he keeps knocking these out and cashing huge checks, right? So for me, ultimately, a little, I don't know, ho hum is how I feel about this.
Ho-hum.
2.5 stars out of 5. Don't not go see it. I wouldn't trash this movie. If you like Bourne movies, go see it. Watch another episode of the continuing adventures of Json Bourne.
I would say don't see it in the theater. Maybe if for some reason it comes on TBS like all the others later, like check it out there. I would go back and watch the old ones. You'll have a much better time, even though you know what's going to happen. Mainly because you know what's going to happen in this one as well. There's nothing new here at all. There are 5 things I think that you go to see a Json Bourne movie for. Number 1, extreme close-ups. I think we almost like get X-rays of these people. There are some scenes where it goes so close. I think we're doing like a retina scan on one of the actors at a certain point. It just keeps getting closer and closer and closer. So that's number 1. Number 2, handheld camera. The shaky cam on this is taken to another level. I don't know if you felt the same, but to me, things are just going all over the place. It's
Quite
like
epileptic, yes.
Yikes. Yep, that's a good way of putting it, I suppose. On a not good day, I guess. Yeah, I just shouldn't dodge that one. Fight scenes, Euro cops, with like you just kind of are reminded the cops really didn't have much.
I
to
love
do
a
in this
good Euro
movie,
cop.
but
I love a good out of season siren, out
siren.
of country siren.
Yes,
Oh, love it.
the cops aren't even doing anything. It was like, by the way, we're
Yeah.
not in America, so here's some Euro cop sounds.
Yep.
And then that song, as I mentioned. So those are the 5 things. None of those things really add up to a really great movie, but they're here nonetheless. I'm right with you, 2.5 stars. Skippable. Don't see this. Go see something else. Watch some of the other Bourne movies. Dig up the old HD DVD collection that you've got in your basement.
Yeah, we're right in the middle, and so is Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, the critic score is sitting at 57, the audience score is at 65. And that sounds about right. Json Bourne fans will like it a little bit better than most. But I feel like based on our scores and these scores and everything that we've said, it all adds up to the fact that if you didn't already know this character so well, this is an incredibly forgettable movie.
Better than Terminator 3?
Oh, yeah, set the bar high there, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, with that said, we'll move on to this week's 6 Degrees of Chill. Just a top drawer entry this week with Inglorious Basterds. For those of you who don't know, this is the segment of the show where we do a deep dive into a movie from our past. In this case, something we already knew and loved. Inglorious Basterds from 2009, starring oh so many of our favorites. Brad Pitt and Michael Fassbender. Yes, Christoph Waltz, Melanie Laurent, Eli Roth, Daniel Bruhl, Diane Kruger, Till Schweiger. Just so much good shit going on here. We go on a deep dive. We're going to spoil the crap out of this movie. We're going to talk about the beginning, the middle, and the end. We try and keep it linear, although we rarely succeed. We take notes and we go on digressions, and it's just an opportunity to talk about a movie we absolutely love. In this case, I hope Sean agrees with me for a little while. So with that being said, I very much like to, in these sections, get my feelings on the movie out at the beginning, and then so we don't have to color it with what are we going to say about it at the end. And I'll say that for myself personally, I ended up giving this movie 4.5 stars out of 5. I absolutely love it. It has its imperfections, and that's what keep it from being a 5 out of 5. But 4.5 out of 5 for me, 89% on the tomato meter from critics, 87 from fans. And what did Sean Capri give it?
Okay, so I'm wavering if there's like a needle between 4.5 and 5. I think I'm going to award this a 5 out of 5 stars. I watched this last night very late, which has another reason to do with why I'm ridiculous. Like I'm just kind of running off of caffeine right now, so hopefully you guys are enjoying this. This is the kind of movie that I wanted to learn another language. Like I just think that it celebrates everything about movie, about language, about acting and delivery and setting just so perfectly. I think this is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, and we'll get into why in just a little bit. I need to take a quick pause. I need to go back to last week. We had a 6 degrees of chill, and I listened back to the episode, and I have to deliver a very sincere apology to Jennifer Belland. I kind of went off the handle a little bit. And, I was getting a reaction from you while I was doing it, like you were giggling a little bit, and I kind of like took that in completely the wrong way. I was being an absolute asshole.
I'm not used to angry Sean.
No, it wasn't what I meant. I shouldn't have personally attacked our like number one fan. So I'm embarrassed. I'm very sorry. That was not at all. I was trying to be entertaining, and I ended up being Michael Richards.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think you're being a little hard on yourself. I think Jen would agree. One of my favorite people in the world, and
me too. Not what I wanted to do. And
I
actually,
know she didn't take it that way, and
so,
I think we can. Now that you've offered sincere apologies in that way, we can just get back to how great her suggestions are, and everybody's suggestions this week before we go from here. And that's one of the things I love about a great movie like this is the places we can go. So.
But I want to also redact what I said, because I said don't give us shitty movies, but I actually kind of want those three. Like, we shouldn't always be talking about 5 out of 5 stars, because as fun as it was to watch, I think we're both just going to be like, oh, praise the Lord, praise Quentin Tarantino and Christoph Waltz and all these things, and fuck the Nazis. We should be watching movies that make us think and criticize movies a little bit more. So I take back 100%. Not only was I a complete asshole, but it's actually not very good for the show, for all we're doing is watching tremendous movies. So, redacted.
Terrific.
Redacted.
Well, I'm sure she appreciates it. So,
right.
That being said, the original question, you ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars,
Yes.
you said?
Yeah, I can't. I don't think I can think of something that, aside from maybe BJ Novak, like, is kind of I think this movie is just so. I can recommend this basically to any adult. Like, this is not a child's movie, but any adult should watch this movie. I think it's tremendous. I think this is something where Quentin Tarantino writes something, and to have some nobody come in like Christoph Waltz and just embody this character so perfectly. Every time I watch this movie, I appreciate him more and more and more. And I pick up, like, there's some points where I'm laughing at how just despicable he is and how he is terrifyingly polite.
Yes.
And I love every nuance. Even when he goes a little crazy, he starts laughing, and then he does that thing where you kind of like throw your hand in front of your face and just gives you this stare. And I don't remember whenever he's drinking milk, he's having nice conversation, and then he gets down to business and he delivers this stare, and I just, like, my heart stopped, and I'm like, I hope that, like, I know that it's 2016, but I hope I'm not hiding any enemies of the state in my house. Like, because he'll come after me. He's amazing.
He absolutely is. And I will say, for people who think of conversations or debates or arguments as competition, he proves the strength of being comfortable sitting in an awkward silence that you created, because he does sit and stare through your soul in those places. So I love notes like that, and I want to see where yours come in. So I took my notes in a very linear fashion based on the chapter style of this movie. So to give us a starting point to talk about this and sort of go through it in a linear fashion, the synopsis for this movie is super simple. In Nazi-occupied France during World War II, a plan to assassinate Nazi leaders by a group of Jewish U.S. soldiers coincides with a theater owner's vengeful plans for the same. And I hope you watched this movie this week, but if you didn't, like Sean says, absolutely something I would recommend to everyone, except for my mother. If you're listening, don't ever watch this movie. Not for you. But I know her taste, Sean. Trust me, this is not a Ruby movie, okay? So I will say, when this movie starts off, right, chapter 1 is the scene that I think anyone who's ever seen this movie thinks of first when they think of this movie, right? Which is the one that introduces us to Colonel Landa, Christoph Waltz's character, and the female lead in this movie, ultimately Shoshana Dreyfus, right, is, as we find out, hiding under the floorboards. Now, everyone really focuses on Christoph Waltz in the scene, and he is fantastic and deserves every bit of praise that he gets. But unless you're IMDbing it, right? Even as I was making my notes, it's like I'll look it up later. The French father from Chapter 1 is every bit the actor that Christoph Waltz is. He is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Pierre Lapidite. I don't know the actor's name, but to me, he's French Gerard Butler.
Denis Ménochet.
That's what I said.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he is deadpan but terrified. You can see it in his eyes, just trying to keep it together, being a rock for his family and just leading by example. And kind of, when he can see the Nazis come up, he asks for his water. He does his wash up. He's trying to keep the routine down. He says, "Go inside." And then when Christoph Waltz arrives and he asks for milk, I don't know what is so terrifying about him asking for a glass of milk, but it rocks you nice and early.
I think it's maybe the familiarity, right?
Of milk?
Well, no, just with that family. Not intimacy, I think that's too on the nose of a word, but more he's taking the politeness of saying make yourself at home to a level that's uncomfortable. He really is proving how settled and relaxed he is during what is going to be a very intense interrogation and a very serious thing. And his level of comfort and his ease is unsettling for someone who's that tense all the time. It forces Lapidite into a position of weakness in the sense that he's got to spend as much time as he's thinking about his answers and thinking about not saying the wrong thing. He's also got to hold down this bubbling panic inside of him, and nothing will sort of set that off as much as the person you're face to face with being incredibly at ease, right? It's the smirk or the wink or the smile from a pitcher to a batter. It's a relaxed chuckle at a poker table, right? It's just being at ease is unsettling to the person you're opposite.
One, especially in that uniform, when all you've come to expect is complete violence, and he's coming in and speaking his language. He's speaking French, and I love the moment where he asks him, "Is it okay if I have exhausted my French? Is it okay if we switch to English?" Which is a bit of a wink to the audience, I think, more than anything. I think I read that only 30% of this movie is in English, which is incredible, just thinking of the fact that it's a Hollywood movie. And so he switches over into English, and they continue the charade. And Lapidite, I can't really tell if he's buying it or because there's a misdirection in his kindness where I don't know if Landa is forcing him into this being comfortable around him so that he does slip up, or if they both know. Like, I don't know if Lapidite knows that he's just about to strike, but there's this kind of terrifying confidence in him. Like, Landa knows he's in the right spot. He knows he's gonna, he's a bit of a sociopath, really. He
Absolutely.
knows he's right there. He's thinking about his prey as if they're a rat, and then flipping the script on. Even before that, he talks about why does he hate the Jews, and he flips it to why do you hate a rat? They're kind of like a squirrel, and aside from the tail, they kind of look alike. But all you don't know why, but you know that you hate rats. And for a brief moment, you're kind of like, that is about as easy as it would be to brainwash an entire army into thinking, you're right, let's get rid of them. It's terrible, but that metaphor is just so relatable and understandable. You're like, that is crazy, and I cannot believe that this happened in real life. So there's so many things happening in here that makes it such a profound scene. It's one-on-one, it's intimate, it's long, but there's not a wasted frame. Every single word that these two exchange, I think, adds to the tension and just draws you off of your couch and closer to the screen, just waiting to see what is going to happen.
It's an Olympian feat, ironically enough, with what's going on in the world. Right? It's an absolutely amazing display of Tarantino's writing talent that I believe that this scene would and still will be in 50 years, when they remake this movie or it becomes a stage play, anyone who does this scene with a fraction of the acting talent of these two men, it's still going to be unsettling. It's still going to be unnerving. I think playing with the audience and manipulating their feelings is a sign of a great writer and a great director. And in this case, he's doing both jobs magnificently. And you are 4 minutes into a movie and he has you in his hands and can emotionally take you anywhere he wants to go. And like I say, I think the best sensation in terms of thinking a movie is amazing. One of the feelings that resonates most with me is my not understanding my own feelings. If you can put you in a place where you don't know, am I more terrified or curious or charmed by this acting performance or I don't know what, and that confusion mixed in with all the other feelings is what makes something like this so unbelievable.
Completely dumbfounded, and there's an innovative approach that I think goes sort of unspoken to. We've never seen really anything like this before, this character and the way that he embodies him. I mean, the other thing, okay, so we'll get back on track in terms of the story. We also don't know, if you're watching this for the first time, you actually don't know if Lapidite is hiding this family or not. You'd like to think that he's not. You'd like to think they're having an honest conversation. Hopefully, I mean, just as a pacifist, maybe you kind of hope that nothing is going to come of this, and they'll get away scot-free. But as we come to learn about Landa, he is extremely, quote unquote, good at his job, and he is in the right place. And there's a part where you finally do see the family under the floorboards, and there's a crack in the floor and a highlight on the eyes and the terror that is in their eyes. It reminded me of Kill Bill, and there's a lot of Uma Thurman kind of like nods or callbacks to. I think if Uma Thurman spoke French, she probably would be in this role as Shoshana. I mean, that's just Quentin Tarantino, but Shoshana was phenomenal, or Emmanuel, as we later get. I just wanted to just learn more French as we got to through this movie. I just wanted to speak more languages. I feel kind of stupid just that I pretty much only understand English and a few of the words that they speak in French. I'm like, oh, I get where they're saying there.
Well, Christoph Waltz's verbal gymnastics are almost a detriment to the film in the sense that it's so amazing that you keep focusing on, like, who the hell is this guy? If you've never seen it before, never seen him before,
why haven't I seen this guy?
He's incredible, right?
Yeah.
But so as the story goes, the scene in the farmhouse does end poorly, and he finds the family on the floorboards and fires through the floorboards, and Shoshana makes her break over the hill, and chapter 1 ends, and we move into chapter 2.
And finally, you can breathe, by the way.
Yeah, you do. You take your first breath in a long, long time. That's a good point. And we get introduced to the Bastards, right? Brad Pitt and his crew of Jewish American soldiers who are going to get dropped in behind enemy lines in Nazi-occupied France and wage war on the Nazis using violence and terror as their tactics. Yep. Guerrilla warfare learned from their battles with the natives in their own land. And Brad Pitt gives this speech as a playing up a character that's so cartoonish, I want to say, but I think less a cartoon and more a comic book character is what I would say.
Sure.
He seems drawn more than realized, right? And I just, again, I don't know if it's because I've seen this movie so many times that I get pulled out of the movie for a little bit, and I'm thinking about the context of this performance and this actor and his career and stuff like that. And I just thought, man, I'd love to be so fucking handsome, right, that I could spend time trying to figure out ways to fuck up my face.
And your neck.
Just so I could feel like one of the busted-ass common folk that come to watch my movies, right? Like, it just... He's doing a dumb accent with a dumb, like, underbite affectation and a stupid mustache and a bad haircut, and it just... Yeah, well, he knows at the end of the day he's Brad Pitt, and he gets to walk away from this movie as Brad Pitt, so...
Doesn't matter what your mustache looks like, he's got perfect bone structure, so you can't hide that.
Yeah, exactly. And it just... So as he's going through his speech and setting this up, it's it took me out of the movie for a second. But
Oh, that's okay. That's too
the
bad.
setup is great as
Yeah.
exposition, and sort of giving us, again, I've mentioned before in these podcasts, sort of like laying out all the pieces on the chessboard, and you got one side with getting introduced to Landa and Shoshana, and now you're getting introduced to the bastards on this side. And just it's something that I thought was a really, really good function in terms of moving the story forward and laying out a movie, right?
Yeah, well, most importantly, I think you've got, obviously in the very beginning, a clear bad guy. How are we going to take care of this guy? Because he's obviously incredibly great at what he does. He's lethal in every move that he makes, and he doesn't miss. How are we going to take care of this? And then you got the bastards who are just, they revel in their lunacy, and they're psychotic in the way that they enjoy skinning the scalps off, cutting the scalps off of Nazi Germany. And you're kind of like, I'm right there with you. If I was there, that's exactly what I would want to do. And I wouldn't want them to be able to take off their uniform and burn it. I would want to have them to carve a swastika in there. You're like, takes your wildest dreams of what you would do, how you would punish these people for doing what they did, and they're like, we're just going to do it, and we're going to put it in the movie, and we're not going to hold any of it back.
We're not going to apologize for it. And you're right, he calls it a revenge fantasy, and this is your first sort of glimpse into that, right?
Yep.
So they introduce the bastards, and then they bring in Samuel L. Jackson to narrate
Yeah.
like sort of character introductions within the bastards, right?
Mhm.
Stiglitz's character, and then Eli Roth's Bear Jew in the next amazing scene. But Samuel Jackson narrating, like, by the way, it's almost like again, in terms of permission to breathe or relax for a second, they do the cool music and Sam Jackson's voice and some harsh Nazi murders to introduce Hugo Stiglitz. And it's just, oh yeah, okay, we're still watching a Tarantino movie.
Total 100%. As soon as he starts
Very, very
talking,
cool.
you can imagine that Tarantino didn't even have to reach out and ask Samuel Jackson to do anything. I think that they just started production on the movie, and then Samuel Jackson just like hopped in a cab and just was taken to the movie. Just like gravity was kind of like pulling him in. He didn't even realize what was happening. He's like, I guess I'm going to do a Tarantino movie just for the afternoon to do this voiceover stuff. I love the character, because the characters are really interesting, and it's kind of nice that they get a small portion of just kind of like what is their backstory. They're all very interesting in their own ways, even though what they're doing is they're all doing basically the same activity, but they come from different places. Hugo, I think, is so awesome. He reminds me of like, this is what a live action Wolfenstein 3D character like BJ Blazkowicz, I think, would be Hugo Stiglitz. I think he's awesome. And they talk about how he comes from the SS, but he murders from the inside. He murders, I think, 13 other Nazis, and they throw him in jail, but the bastards break him out. And just Brad Pitt coming up, and this is Tarantino just kind of like, he doesn't even care how cheesy this looks, because a lot of this is really corny. They've got Stiglitz in the prison, and then Brad Pitt comes in. They kill a bunch of guys, and they all kind of like pose as if like the end of a G.I. Joe movie or cartoon.
Avengers Assemble, right?
Yeah.
We're just giving everybody a little backstory.
Yes.
It's like we're putting together a super team of Nazi murderers. Golden State Warriors 73 wins, and
Yep.
we're going to kill some Germans.
Yeah, we're a big fan of your work, he says, as he's trying to like win him over, as if he has to win him over at all.
Recruiting.
There's totally on the nose joke. After they've shot up the entire hallway of guards, one of them is half dead. You kind of hear a moan, and then they shoot him, and it's so perfectly cheesy, and again, exactly what you would want to have happen to these terrible human beings.
Yep, and it's funny and violent. And then they go into the trench scene, the ditch scene, which for me, I realized in rewatching it, everybody focuses on the first scene with Colonel Landa as like the iconic scene coming from this, but this is another one. It's right on par in terms of a set piece, dialogue heavy. We're now going to sit in this area and do a 12-minute scene or whatever it is, and it feels just as good in rewatching it. The interrogation of the three survivors of their ambush and Werner the German and his describing who he is and who the rest of the bastard is. It's a way of introducing more characters and introducing more backstory through a conversation.
Yeah.
And again, in terms of mixed feelings or whatever it is, you've got this begrudging respect for this Werner character who says, I'm not going to give up my guys. I'm going to die. I'm on this side of the war. You're on yours. And we're rooting for him to die. And he's going to, and you know it.
Mm-hmm.
But he acts that role in a very true feeling way. And I just think every piece of this scene is great, right up to the sound of Eli Roth knocking his bat against the wall underneath the bridge, and the introduction of the Bear Jew before he comes out and beats this guy to death in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just bouncing his skull off of the bat and off the ground, and like it's farther away than you might expect for it to have that same sort of impact of very disturbing. But even though you're kind of watching it from a bird's eye view, the thing that I like about this scene, and it reminds me of something in the previous scene Quentin Tarantino does very, very well, is rather than he's still kind of telling you rather than showing you, but he does this thing where he makes a character ask, so you've heard of me, or you've heard of the things that I've done, and they go yes, and then he makes them ask, tell me what you've heard, rather than anybody bragging about their accomplishments or other sort of weak exposition kind of tropes. This is a really interesting way, because the whole movie is really based on reputation and people's reputations preceding them. And it's kind of a neat way for us to be introduced to the characters and jumping into this world. And it's like all these people know each other or know of them. And it's because of all the despicable things they've done to the other side. And I wanted to recognize that in this scene and in the previous one as well. I love what have you heard about me?
And I never thought of that, and that's a great observation, because yeah, that's exactly what they're doing, is they're just trying to find different ways to introduce each character so it doesn't feel like you're reading off of a list.
Yes, exactly. So we see the first Nazi get his head beaten in, then the second one, he kind of panics, he tries to run away.
And gets instantly shot.
Instantly, like he doesn't even take his second and a half step. He wouldn't even be called for traveling in a basketball game.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, for me, when Werner refuses to give up the other German sites, right, and he says no for the second time, right before we get introduced to Eli Roth, Pitt's reaction to him saying "fuck you" is priceless to me. It's one of my favorite moments in the entire movie, because he expresses genuine happiness. Yep. Like, yes, I was hoping you were going to say that. So now
I don't really care. We're going to find out later.
Yeah, exactly. It was so funny. Like, it was all a setup. And the way Tarantino interjects humor into this, because like you say, after that second guy gets shot, the third guy is more than willing to give shit up immediately. Instantly. And they're also introducing comedy with Eli Roth's insanely thick Boston accent, like straight out of not Good Will Hunting, but like the mocking SNL versions of Good Will Hunting. The
Jane Silent Bob versions.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about Teddy fucking ball game. Like, he's just, I don't know why you're laughing right after you saw a guy get his head caved in, but it's just, again, it's Tarantino playing with you as a viewer.
Yeah, okay, so here's real talk. Between him and BJ at Novak, they almost had me pull this back a half a star. I don't love Eli Roth in this. I think he kind of overacts, whereas Brad Pitt I know is overacting, but somehow it works. I think Eli Roth is not quite the fit, but there's also kind of this weird, again, another misdirection where you're hearing the word Bear Jew over and over again. You're thinking this guy's going to be an absolute monster, like he's going to be wearing a grizzly bear like skin fur on like
right out of The Revenant.
Yeah, exactly. And then he comes out and it's Eli Roth, and you're kind of like, oh, haha, and that wears off pretty quickly. This is probably for me one of the weakest casting, but that might just be me.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't have a problem with it, right? Nothing really threw me in this movie casting-wise, even though, yes, I don't know why they chose some of these people. And actually, the one that I did mention later on in my notes was just, we're skipping ahead here for a second, but Mike Myers shows up later in the movie in a role that could have been given to literally 1,000 other actors, and there's no reason to stunt cast that role. Yeah, and I didn't think he did a bad job, but it just, in terms of throwing me, I get what you're saying, because that happened to me later on. So
yeah, for sure. And so we end the scene with the third Nazi giving up his buddies and thinking that he's going to get away, but of course they carve a swastika in his forehead and tell him, "Go tell all your friends who we are," so they get to spread the word. It's a little bit of they want to go viral.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. In a mono world or in a low tech world, right?
Well, and that's what I love about this is that it's such a lo-fi way of spreading rumors and making, the news of what they've done go around.
Yeah,
And
propagandizing, really.
yeah, really. So the second, that's really it for me with the second chapter. We move on to the third one, and at this point, really for me is when I'm going, this movie might be perfect. This movie, I like 2 chapters, completely hit it out of the park. No pun intended. Well, kind of intended. Pardon the pun. I love the first 2 chapters. We start to get back now into chapter 3. It's called A German Night in Paris, and we meet back up with Shoshana, now known as Emmanuelle Mimieux.
Mimieux, yep.
Mimieux. And she is being pestered by Daniel Bruhl's character, Zoller. And I really actually kind of like what's happening here. He is super annoying in kind of this weird German way. And I'm not sure if that's part of Quentin Tarantino's intent here is to kind of belittle them as much as possible, like make them annoying, make them kind of girly, even in a way where you see later on in the movie we learn that Zoller is a war hero, and a lot of his other comrades meet him, see him, and they kind of get giddy around him. And I feel like that was done intentionally just to make the Nazis not quite as tough. It really takes them down a notch.
Well, that's the thing. In a certain way, it humanizes them, right? It makes you recognize that Germans of the time were still people with lives, and you notice that in the basement scene with Wilhelm and his son Max, and you notice it here, and the viewer again is challenged to sort of think the way that I think Tarantino is pointing you to, which is, what is Daniel Bruhl doing wrong here, right? Like, other than the fact that he's wearing that uniform. This is an exchange that would have happened at this time. This is all natural. He likes a girl, right? He speaks her language. They have a common thread. He has a reason to strike up a conversation, right? But it's all colored by where they are in the time and everything. It's just, it's again Tarantino creating tension where there was none. In this case, with the attitude of the 2 characters towards each other, this sort of boyish, puppy doggish affection, the crush that Daniel Bruhl has, and then the way that Melanie Laurent, Emmanuelle in this case, is sort of standoffish and distant, and not because of the regular, hey, you have to try harder, boy meets girl reasons, because you're a fucking Nazi and you killed my entire family. Like, it's rom-com with a really dark center to it. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
It's part of what makes this film so great, and I absolutely love it. And they, like I say, you introduce those 2 characters, you introduce the theater, which is going to be very important. Later on in the chapter, you introduce Daniel Bruhl's boss, as he says, Goebbels, another higher up in the German government.
Yep.
And it's just, here is the meat of the story. Here is really you starting to get a clearer picture of what this story is going to be about. Because the funny thing is, as deep as we are into this movie, and I mean, you can tell with the length of this conversation, we're just getting started at this point, right? And so you have to form the relationship between Zoller and Emmanuelle, or in Shoshana in this case, and you have to set up the crux of this movie and the realization of what she's going to do when they decide to hold the Nazi film premiere there, that she's going to burn down the theater with every high-ranking Nazi officer in the country in there at the same time. And you've moved away from what the Bastards are doing. You don't yet know that they're going to try the exact same thing at the same time and place. But you start seeing how these characters intertwine. And the one note I really wanted to make, or the one thing I wanted to make note of, as I should say, is just another acting performance that get lost in how iconic Christoph Waltz was.
Yeah.
Because Daniel Bruhl is kicking the ass off this script. Like, talk about, like, again, verbal gymnastics in multiple languages and charm and wit and intimidation and hiding a brooding anger underneath a layer of like I say, what he thinks is affection. Just, he's terrific in this movie. And it's just, I'd never would have, if you would have mentioned to me what are the acting performances that stand out to you in Inglorious Basterds, it's Christoph Waltz #1. It's Michael fucking Fassbender, which is what I titled Chapter 4.
Michael
That's what
fucking
they should have
Fassbender.
retitled that. It was my introduction to him as an actor. and
Yeah,
I think he's
for
a
most of
forgotten
us too.
role I was going to mention later. And Melanie Laurent, I think, is underrated in this as well. And it's just Daniel Brühl would have been fourth on a list of amazing acting performances for me. And I think he's doing a terrific job. I think they easily could have had 3 nominations for Best Supporting Actor in one movie.
Somehow, I think that that's kind of where everybody ends up years later. But I remember at the time that is definitely not how everybody watched the movie, and it does. Everybody else's performances do get swallowed up by the individual of Christoph Waltz, and so Zoller's kind of persistent. We come to learn later that it's coming from a place of unbridled confidence, and that nobody says no to him. Yeah. But it comes off as just completely innocent, like she's playing hard to get, but he doesn't. But really, like, she's not playing hard to get. She's like, get the F away from me. I would shoot you if I could. And the other thing too that's kind of interesting here is, again, a movie in the time setting where I would start to think, why doesn't she just say, I have a boyfriend? And here he is. He's the black guy who works in the theater with me. You almost she almost doesn't want to let anybody know that he's working there. Like, it's just a unfortunate part of the times. There's so much racism, but yeah, let alone that they're in love. She can't even use that to scare him away. There's really nothing that she can do. And so she finds herself in these situations where she's just having a morning coffee or whatever in the cafe, and he spots her through the window, and then he comes on in, and that's where we start to see him being spotted by other Nazis who are going giddy, trying to get they're like proud to introduce their wives and girlfriends to him. And eventually we find Shoshana with Dr. Joseph Goebbels, who is the Minister of Propaganda. And what a perfect character for us to have in a movie like this. The minister, like, Hitler is kind of a given. We need to have him in this movie. But the Minister of Propaganda, the guy who is in charge of driving the Nazi marketing machine, he's right there. And he's kind of like, as horrible of the things that Hitler did, you're kind of almost just equally as mad as this guy for buying into it and then selling it to everybody else and making everybody just brainwashing the populace.
He's so loathsome, and knowing
he's despicable. He's a
with
weasel.
The context, yes, and with the context of history, his smugness and pride, is that much more loathsome. It's disgusting.
I love his interactions with his mistress / translator as well. I think is hilarious. Yes. And so we talked last week about two days in New York with the language barrier being, they don't understand each other and that not quite working. Every single time individuals are unable to understand each other, it works so perfectly and actually adds to the scene. And then it's not only that, but they're like, she's translating. And so you're actually hearing the same line, I don't know, 2-3 times, but they do it in a way that I was never annoyed. I acknowledge it just kind of as an observation, but I was never annoyed at the fact that I was hearing a line and then the same line again, but just in a different language, and then again at the bottom in a subtitle.
It's absolutely musical. It's a dance Tarantino is conducting in this scene, and it absolutely has to do with timing.
Yep.
And beats, and I swear I thought of that same thing where we're listening to a consecutive translation and reading a subtitle at the same time, and they literally have the actors speaking at a pace where you read along with the consecutive translation for one sentence. It is I don't know if this is Tarantino or an amazing AD helping with something this technical in the same way that you would hire a fight choreographer for a stunt like that. This just seems so technical in terms of language and timing and blocking. I can't imagine how long it took to film a scene like this. In the middle of this scene, or nearing the end of the scene, when Hans Landa walks into the room,
shows up,
and Shoshana has to deal with that. This was the first moment where I realized that I was giving this movie 100% to this point, because the first mistake that I felt they made is I really hated that he felt the need to show her running over the hill and him screaming au revoir Shoshana as she's running over the hill, as if you didn't realize who she was and who he was and the impact of them being in the same room with the musical beat and the close up on her face. Like, you did a good enough job. So it's literally And honestly, this is a momentary blip, right? It was like a skip on a CD that is not followed by another skip, right? It's just
Right.
a quick bit and then moving on. And but yes, just so intense and such a great scene overall.
Yeah, so again, he knows, or it seems like he thinks he knows, and this is where I really start to question: is he always right? Does he have this like killer instinct, but doesn't always strike on it? So because he sort of displays that same confidence, that same swagger that he does in the first one. He even asked for a glass of milk for her, so he recognizes her, but
Well,
doesn't.
no, but
What we
that's
learn later.
Tarantino again, right? Does he recognize
But he
her? With
does. I think he does, and I think I'm just as I'm talking this out, I'm realizing what actually happens. He recognizes her, gives her. He orders himself an espresso, and he orders her a glass of milk. And again, it's that glass of milk. It's very symbolic in a way that you realize this is almost like him giving you. It might as well be poison. It's just like you're in his crosshairs, and he does the same thing of killing you with kindness. He orders the delectable desserts and waiting for the cream. I pray for the cream. Like it's so perfect. Um, but he kind of lets her go. So he has her in his crosshairs, lets her go, and we learn later that he isn't as completely dedicated to the cause as you might think, given just how cutthroat he is. We learn later that he kind of wants the war to be over, and maybe I don't know if he sees her as an opportunity for that at this point, but that's the only explanation I can come up with for why he doesn't just kill her there or immediately after.
Okay, so I need to stop here. Like, I wanted to keep us moving through this because we're dragging a little bit here, but I need to stop here. This is amazing to me. I've never heard this theory. I'm shocked that you felt this, and I completely disagree. I think the milk is absolutely just a tension builder for the audience, right? It's a coincidence, and he has no idea who she is. He is toying with her and trying to get something out of her. He's doing the interrogation the same as he did with La Petite, but he's doing this because this is how he interacts with everybody he doesn't know and is suspicious of. But he doesn't make the actual link that this is a Jew under an assumed name, and not only that, but one that he knows. I never even thought of that possibility.
I link it because of the milk, the dairy farm that like La Petite was on a dairy farm.
And I think you're
that's
supposed
why
to think that as a viewer in that moment. But
Sure.
once he lets her go, you realize, oh, he didn't actually know who she was. They never call it back later, right? He never mentions her or recognizes her, has a moment of realization with her. He's not even in the room when her face comes up, right? Like, it just...
Yeah, then I don't know. Then this might be a bit of a miss in the movie then, because I think he achieves that with the dessert.
I love it. I love that we disagree on this. I love that you got something so completely different from what I got, and that I've seen this movie at least now, I'd say between 8 and 10 times, and discussed it however many times, and never heard anybody say that before. I love it.
That's what I locked in from the very first time that I saw him, and it seemed like it was even more honed in for me this time. But anyways, let us continue.
So to keep the train chugging along, we jump to, like I say, the chapter 4, the chapter I've retitled Michael fucking Fassbender. He is presented to us bathed in light in all his splendor. This is where I first fell in love with Michael Fassbender and realized how great he was. And when this movie got mentioned to us last week, it didn't even quite strike me that this is where it happened, where I was like, oh, I really fucking like this guy. Like, he's so great. And I feel like everybody we're complimenting in this movie is the people who speak multiple languages. It's not that. It's how engaging he is. It's how glued to the screen he keeps you when he's speaking. Everybody in a Tarantino movie is effusive and eloquent and delivers all this dialogue that he's written for them in such a way that most people, Tarantino will do with you what he wants. If you're supposed to like this person, he's going to make it happen.
Yeah.
But I think what Fassbender does that separates himself is really delivers with his looks and his twitches and his acting in the moments of silence and his reaction to other actors and stuff like that. So you've got this scene setting up the basically setting the stage for what we're about to see in the basement with Mike Myers, which again I thought was a bit of a miss, right? But then
Because all you hear is Austin Powers. You see an old man, but you hear Austin Powers.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? You've got again what I think is a brief comic relief break with Brad Pitt bitching about fatting in a basement, right? And but then we get another set piece. We get another extended, solitary, dialogue-heavy scene that's been set up, like I say, for you when they go down into this bar, and let's create an ungodly amount of tension and discomfort. And now here, sit and bathe in it. Just sit here and experience how uncomfortable you are for the next 15 minutes waiting for something to go wrong that you know is going to go wrong. It's the moment before you hit something with your car when you grip your steering wheel tighter and brace for impact, except he makes that moment of sickness in the pit in your stomach last 15 minutes.
Yeah, the nausea just continues to build up, and so it's more than even just the characters and the situations that they find themselves in. This movie, I think, does setting so well, and by that I don't mean Europe. I mean the room that they're in. The fact that it's very claustrophobic. It's small, and
Great
you
word,
know that you're trapped. You know that you're in this basement, and that it's difficult to get out. So not only the characters trapped, but you're right there with them. And there's also the way that the room is laid out. There are blind spots, so all the characters don't know who's waiting around the corner. There's a sense of confidence as they get in there. Right. They know that they're hiding, and they're trying to be they're pretending to be Nazis, and they appear to be Nazis. Their German is good enough, and this is where we find out that Michael Fassbender, while he speaks German, his accent is a little bit off. And one of the drunken characters, Wilhelm, who is celebrating the birth of his son by abandoning his wife and going out for drinks with the boys, his wife who is a new mother, just leaving her, gonna go get hammered, and he actually is the one who calls Michael Fassbender out on his accent. He drunkenly gives him this stare, and it's the last thing you expect. At least for me, this was the last thing I expected at this moment, was for this idiot to have the gall to call him out on this accent. And so the bastards put him in his place. They remember the uniform that they're wearing and the stripes or whatever it is that's giving away their rank, and try to put him in his place by kind of yelling at him and, who do you think you are? And this is where the new Nazi comes in, and he looks very impressive. He's clearly a man of rank, and kind of backs up Wilhelm, and this is where the tension starts.
Yeah, and it just, like I say, you mentioned claustrophobia, and that's right. This is the point where you realize what a tight situation that they're in, and Hickox has got to sort of stick handle in a phone booth here to try and get out of this. It's so tension-filled, like we were saying, and it's another great dance scene, really, of dialogue. And they're playing games with each other, and it's swinging from kindness to hostility, and it's just, it's absolutely wonderful. If you watched it with us, you know. If you haven't, this is just yet another memorable, iconic moment in this movie. And what I love about it, sort of in the macro view, is Tarantino introduces us like 7 new characters.
Yep.
and gives us an amazing scene 2/3 of the way through a great movie, right? That really only serves to make sure that Diane Kruger walks into this movie premiere with a limp, that Hans Landa knows the source of, and a lost shoe, and that Brad Pitt is at her side. The rest of it, all the other characters that he introduces get wiped right off the board at the end of the scene. It's a mini Reservoir Dogs in 15 minutes in the middle of the movie, right? And it's such good storytelling from his perspective, in the sense that everything you get in the climax feels earned.
Yep.
In the sense that everyone, when we move on to chapter 5, everyone in the theater that we've been this point of finality we've been driving towards for the entire movie is there for a reason and has a specific role to play, and there's none of the confusion that was implied or actually realized early in the movie about, wait, who's that one again, and which one, and who, double agents, and where's that? from British soldier. None of that.
Super clear.
None of that is going on.
Well, the thing about it is that a lot of these scenes, even though they build upon each other and to the climax that we're getting to here, they all are self-sustaining. Like they can all stand on their own. You could put this before another Quentin Tarantino movie and call it like a Pixar short kind of thing, and you'd be like, I am completely satisfied, but by just that.
Fuck
and
that. Make it more like the Avengers, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If each of these characters had a 2-hour movie, and this was like in the 9th year of the canon, and this is all of them coming together at once finally.
Yes, absolutely. So yet another great scene, of course, the German 3 versus whatever the other type of 3 is the thing that we all remember. And I think this is another just crazy moment after the movie. You walk out of the theater and you're going on with your friends. You're like, wait, how do you signify 3? Do you do like, and you're like, wait, what do I do? What would I normally do? I probably would have done what he did. So a great part. I was sad and I found myself like, wait, they're all dead. Everybody is dead. And I was just kind of like getting to know these guys. I thought that they were really going to be part of the solution, the final solution.
Wow.
But they're not.
But our boy Fassbender at least goes out speaking the Kings. It's another quotable line, another memorable piece. Like you say, you're right about coming out of the theater saying, how do you do it? Just, like I say, another great scene to propel us along. And then that takes us to chapter 5, and I just, like I say, at this point, I reevaluated sort of where I was and where the scene with Shoshana running over the hill, getting mixed back into it with a reintroduction from Lana, and Mike Myers being ill cast, although not ineffective in his role, away from, again, 100%, batting 1,000, however you want to say it. This is that close to a perfect movie. I'm 100% all in as we walk into the theater for chapter 5.
I'm the same, and I would just clarify that I don't think a 5 out of 5 means a perfect movie, but I think it is the highest like honor or whatever I could bestow upon a movie. I think
this experience. Yeah, you're right.
This deserves the highest accolades. 5 out of 5 that's what 5 out of 5 means for me. That I don't think that a perfect movie exists ever. And so with that in mind, that's where my 5 out of 5 comes in.
So with that being said, we've taken everybody all the way through this movie. Again, I've mentioned in every episode to this point, really, about these older movies, that this is where my note-taking stops, and I just watched the conclusion of this movie that I'm either really enjoying or not, and I really enjoyed this. Did you take any specific notes about chapter 5, the conclusion of this movie? Yeah,
so my favorite is that now that everybody is dead in the previous chapter, everybody who was supposed to go in undercover along with Diane Kruger, we have a bunch of idiot American playing these Italian guys, and even them deciding who's going to play which Italian character based on how much Italian they all speak. And like, you think even in the moment, you're like, well, maybe they do speak a little bit of Italian, but he's not incorrect in saying that Brad Pitt is the guy who speaks the most Italian, but he is terrible. And it's again, this is Arrivederci and Gorlami. Come? Gorlami. Ancora. Gorlami. And he's getting a little pissed, but he can't really show that he's mad. And he's kind of like his
body dying
a little bit. And like all three of them, this is very inside baseball, but it like anybody who does speak Italian would know 100% just based on how the guy is saying his own name, is this guy for real or not? And so something that they did not foresee is that Hans Landa would speak yet another language, or that any German would be able to pick out any Italian at all. And he's insanely fluent. Every time Christoph Waltz jumps from one language to the next, there's this, he changes. It's like watching a voice actor in the booth, like where they actually will, their whole body will act, even though they're only using their voice, their whole body changes. And he does the same thing when he jumps from German to Italian to English. Like it's like he's a puppet, and the puppeteer is kind of like pulling on strings with a different hand. It just shifts his whole tone and language, and obviously his language and his body language. So we get Margheriti and De Coco and all these guys. They're terrible. Their Italian is hilarious, but another use of language barrier being used properly as a device for humor. That was really my biggest thing. And then now we start to see Landa get his hands dirty. This is where he discovers, or really confirms, his discovery in the previous scene that he knew whose shoe this was. He found the note from Diane Kruger to Wilhelm. He puts two and two together and realizes that something is afoot. That was a great pun. And
I'm glad you're proud of yourself.
Strangling is got to be, like, death by strangulation has got to be one of the most violent murders. Or, like, he just puts his hands around her tiny little throat and just squeezes. And to watch the life being just crushed out of her from the neck up is...
It's so hyper-violent. It's so hyper-violent, and it's the physical realization of the evil you know is actually inside of him. And it's something that gets used a lot in movies, delivered in a fresh and such a visceral way, where you take the scary character that's kept it under wraps the entire time and unleash it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And to do it in this way, which is so intimate in the way, like you say, that form of killing is just so literally hands-on. It's stark and it's jarring, and it's like I say, a confirmation of the evil that you knew was there the entire time, and now you're seeing it actualized, and a great and very disturbing scene. And then Daniel Bruhl is another stick in the bike spokes of the plan, because he leaves his seat and goes to have a little murder suicide, not really, double murder with Shoshana up in the projection room. And that scene is personal in the way that she convinces, he gets violent, you see that his true nature, she decides to play him, you see how good and practiced she is at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's quick on her feet. She's a survivor. Obviously, at this point, she's had to be thinking on her feet the entire time. This is a great example.
Yeah, a great defense mechanism to be able to act like that, right?
Yep. She lures him in, 3 shots to the back, but he's super Nazi, and you know that he's going to turn around and just
he's got a gun under her belly. As soon as you start seeing her sort of reveal the tenderness within herself that she murdered a young man who, although he's a Nazi and ultimately on the opposite side, she didn't harbor any personal ill will towards, aside from that, until this most recent moment where he tried to force himself on her, which for me felt a little, now why is she, if you wanted this moment where she feels kindness, a tender spot in her heart for him, why did you have him turn that entire time when he had been holding on to this role as like a soldier doing his job and actually boyish and just wanted to be a regular guy? It's one of the bumps in the final scene for me. The fire being started and the dynamite going off on the legs with all the gunshots. Why would you be up on a balcony if you intended to blow up anyways? Why wouldn't you just go join the crowd? But you see them firing their AKs into the faces of downed Germans to get even more ultra violence in a movie that already had cartoonish blood splatter and harsh murders.
The exclamation point is obviously Adolf Hitler, who is already dead, and then he just unloads an entire clip into his face. And, I don't remember, it's been a while since I've seen this, but I don't remember this being a suicide mission for the Bear Jew and Dakoko. But it clearly is. Like, they walk in with the dynamite strapped to their legs. They're locking themselves in. They're going down with everybody. But they've got enough ammunition and dynamite to take everybody down in a very satisfying way. This is revenge porn for anybody who's had any sort of like ill will against the Nazis, which should be everybody, by the way. So everybody should be really, aside from how violent it is, everybody should be enjoying
Not
it. Not
exactly a hot take. I hope you're really with the majority on that
one. Yeah. And if not, we don't want you listening. Just get out with your Nazi love. Very satisfying to watch all these horrible people get what they deserve. Bunch of bullets to the back or the top of the skull. And to see this plan more or less work despite a few bumps in the road, this goes
like dying. Yeah, dying was a bump in the road for Melanie Laurent's character.
Yeah, that was.
Mimia for sure did not.
She was going to go down. Ultimately, she would have been exploded.
Well, no, her and her old man were outside the locked doors. They would have been in the back alley high-fiving and celebration boning.
You see that explosion? Yeah. Jesus.
That's why they filmed it and didn't do it live on a mic, right? Like, because the plan was set the tape, lock them in, and fucking walk away. I'm sure it wasn't a Sui mission for
Suey.
Manuel and Marcel, but yeah. So you get the satisfying conclusion, like you say there, very revenge porny, and then Hans Landa makes his deal, and you get the distinct impression for at least the briefest of moments that Landa is actually going to talk his way out of this. He's going to wheel and deal and weasel now. Now he's being a rat.
That's
He's going to find a way, bingo, to come away unscathed. A face-to-face between Aldo and Landa is something that I think is fan servicey in a way that it's the way that this story was set up to end. And then ultimately, I like the super abrupt ending with Aldo turning the tide, completing the revenge on all sides, even though ultimately Landa is still going to get his exile that he wants, right? His amnesty, but he gets the swastika mark on him, and we don't need a denouement. This movie's been long enough. That is it. There's your story. Enjoy it. Cope with what you just watched, because it really was a marathon at certain points.
I'm trying to the last line that he says, Brad Pitt, he's carving the swastika in him, and he's talking basically right into the camera, and he says, this might be my masterpiece. And I took that definitely as Quentin Tarantino saying to the audience, this is as good as it gets. I think this might be my masterpiece. And I kind of I walked away as the credits rolled. I was just like, I almost stood up and started clapping. This movie had me the entire time. Mostly everybody in this movie is terrific. I could watch it again. I'm so glad we got to watch this week and relive it on the podcast this week.
Yeah, it was really, really great. I loved it too. Like I say, the ending for me is what took it off the 5. Those two little things that I mentioned throughout the discussion were not enough to take it off of a 5 out of 5. It was the ending, right? The way I phrased it in my own mind was just that it's ultra violent to an unnecessary level, because that tone had already been established in the movie. You didn't have to raise the ante in the end, right? And sort of almost intentionally, like his ode to cinema, almost amateurish and stilted in the end, and rushed and clunky in a way that I was fine with, other than the fact that it was incongruent with how tidy everything got wrapped up in a bow in terms of all the characters, right? The ones that didn't matter too much got swept away in, like I say, a suicide mission that you didn't even realize was a suicide mission, and so on and so forth. And it just
don't use my words against me.
It felt like it would have been a really, really great ending, and it was excellent, but it did not meet the standard that the rest of this sort of masterpiece, as he put it, as his ego allowed him to put in the film. It just didn't meet the standard that it had already put for itself. So, like I say, 5 out of 5 from you, and 4.5 out of 5 for me is nonetheless an absolutely terrific score for a movie that, like I say, got 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. Everybody tends to agree with us. I hope you watched along this week. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you have anything to say about our feelings on this movie, or your feelings on it, please, at Gary T Movies on Twitter, at Sean Capri, at We the Nerdy, tweet us about it. We want to hear your thoughts. Also the Facebook fan group or anywhere like that. And those are also the places where you can send us suggestions for where we go from here. What links to Inglorious Basterds do you want to use to get us to another movie down the line? This week we've got another score of suggestions from superfans Blair and Thane and Corey, and additional ones from Thane, because he's doing us a favor and try and get us to Eddie Murphy's Delirious, and Jennifer and Corey again, Corey Hicks as well as I threw in some suggestions to keep us jumping from genre to genre. But I don't get the benefit of multiple entries that you can get by sharing on Facebook when you see our ads, or not our ads, but our posts about soliciting 6 Degrees of Chill suggestions. Same thing with retweets on Twitter. If you follow us on Twitter and you give us your suggestions there and you retweet those, you get bonus chances as well. Bonus entries on Sean's wonderful Excel spreadsheet that he uses. And
so many chances to win.
For a movie with this much quality and this many great actors, the list of movies here that we got is universally high end. We've got all kinds of 307 and The Man with the Iron Fists and Fight Club and So I Married an Axe Murderer and SLC Punk.
Good one, Corey.
Shrek and X-Men First Class and National Treasures, so we can end up back on Nick Cage for the first time in a while. Reservoir Dogs and Knocked Up. I'd be excited to see either of those. And just absolutely great stuff all the way around. I don't know what Sean's random number generator has done, but he does, and I'm going to eagerly anticipate along with you what the reveal is. What do we got, Sean? Who won and what won?
Okay, so I'll tease this a little bit. It involves a number. There's a few of these movies that involve a number, 300, 7, Ocean's 11, a few of them. So big shout out to everybody who shared, especially Blair Hamilton. You got extra chances for sharing the post on Facebook. And as such, 7 is our movie of the week. I couldn't be happier with this selection of the random number generator. 2 weeks in a row. This movie I still have the DVD of, one of those special collector's edition DVDs. A great little cardboard sleeve that I normally dislike, but it's phenomenal. I can't wait to see this. We've got Kevin Spacey in that movie. We've got Morgan Freeman in that movie. I don't even, or we could go, why am I blanking on the director's name? Don't make this more painful. Now I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just watching your forehead go into the camera. I'm sorry.
David Fincher?
Of course, yes. Let's go to the
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo might actually happen?
It could happen.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, wonderful pick, random number generator.
To Blair. Well done. It was also suggested by Jen as well.
By Jen, yep, you get a win there too.
But Blair's
had a good chance of winning.
The name that came up, which is great because he was just telling me on the weekend that he never gets picked. So keep it going, guys. We love it. Thank you for your suggestions. I'm super excited to watch 7 next week.
Yep.
And now all we got to do is pick a movie to watch next week. And of course, I think we didn't even bother updating a list because we're going to see one thing and one thing only.
9 Lives.
Of course. Yeah. What were you talking?
The Kevin Spacey, I'm a cat now.
Yeah. That's what everyone, we know that, right? That's what we're going to see?
Yep. Yes. No, of course, Suicide Squad is our movie, right?
Yes,
you're making a face. I'm like,
I love that I sat and stared at you for long enough to make you doubt it.
You really caught me on that one. So I get to give a big shout out here to superfan Corey Hicks he actually for my birthday gave me tickets to Suicide Squad. I saw it a few hours ago, and so I'm looking forward to our discussion next week. So big shout out to Corey. Thank you so much, man. That was just very, very generous. More generous than even my family? No, I don't know. Very generous. It was very unexpected, and I anybody who kind of knows me a little bit know that I get a little weird when people give me stuff. This is my way of saying thank you, Corey.
Absolutely. A huge thank you to Corey and everybody who submitted stuff this week, and we're excited to bring you this show every Friday. We thank you so much for sharing it with your friends. Like I say, that's how we get the listeners that we have, is with you guys who listen, telling your friends about us, and we couldn't thank you enough to tell people to subscribe to us on iTunes and rate and review us there if you can, and we absolutely thank you for that. And like I say, we're still up on YouTube at youtube.com/WeTheNerdy, and we've got the Facebook fan group, which is one of the best ways to follow and get all of the updates we send out for suggestions and commentary and whatnot. And yeah, another great episode in the books, Sean. I absolutely love it. The last little business we got to take care of is what's going on the site this week. You got anything coming up?
Yeah, well, it's not me personally, but all you comic book nerds out there with your books and your graphic novels, you might recognize the name Scott Snyder. This means nothing to me, but apparently this is a huge deal. Terry knows, or very.
Very huge.
Very huge. Scott Snyder reached out to Andrew Semichek, the owner of We the Nerdy, and he said in a message, "Hey guys, wondering if you'd like to take an early look at All-Star." Apparently that's a thing. I don't know what you nerds are up to with your comic books and all of that. I'm
so condescending.
I'm with the people. It's We the Nerdy. It's a pun. Again, he'd say, "Would you like to look at All-Star? Love your thoughts, and did we ever figure out an interview?" So we have crazy stuff coming to We the Nerdy. It looks like an exclusive look at this all-star thing from this dude named Scott Snyder who does stuff. So a big deal in the comic book world. So if you're into that at all, be on the lookout for WeTheNerdy.com.
Absolutely. Well, like I say, great stuff going up there all the time. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like I say, follow me, Gary, at Gary T Movies on Twitter. Follow Sean, at Sean Capri, and follow the site at We the Nerdy. And keep on listening and telling your friends. And we love you and thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next Friday.
Love you.